He does. We're live.
Oh, yeah.
There's no content.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Danny, that's pretty much how I saved that bus full of children, but that's not for
yes,
this.
it's awkward time to go live, but that was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Y'all, what is going on? We are back with another one. And so I've been kind of keeping up with the promise that I've made so far to do very interesting live streams for the developer community. And I'm trying to keep this going for as long as I can. And I was so grateful that I have not one, not two, but three incredible individuals that decided to dedicate some time and kind of talk about some stuff. So today we are talking about the state of React Native. And the survey that came out for 2024 results just came out recently, and there's quite a bit that we're going to go over. And I guess before we even start diving into things or going deeper, I've got a lot of questions that I have. I went over the survey myself, and as someone who isn't a React Native developer, but is very hyper-focused in the world of web development, and I have a goal by the end of 2025 to make a React Native app. I come from Android. I'm a Java dev, which I know on Twitter is not always the most viral thing to say as far as like getting a ton of likes. Java doesn't get a lot of love, but Kotlin and Android development and native development have been a core part of my career as well. So I'm interested to see like some of the React Native takes on things. I don't know if I'll have a ton to debate on it since it's kind of a foreign area, but I do have the goal to build something in React Native this year. And I've been doing some preliminary research, so I'm probably going to bother all three of y'all prolifically throughout the year to get some advice. But with that being said, maybe let's do some intros real fast and we can kind of start diving into things.
Cool,
Don't all jump on that.
I'll go. First thing I want to say, Danny, though, is yes, we do need native developers doing React Native. So your take on Java, there's still some Java in there, on React Native is vital. That's why it's React Native. We need the React devs, we need the native devs, so we can get React Native to where it should be. And we'll kind of get into that. But yeah, I'm Mazen Chami, senior software engineer at Infinite Red. You may have heard me on React Native Radio and a new show I'm starting with my co-host Robin, React Native Mornings. And I live in Durham, North Carolina with my wife and toddler.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, one thing I want to say is that Mazen said that we actually went and did a training. Hi, Gant Board, CIO of a fantastic company called Infinite Red. I live in New Orleans. We only got about a foot of water right now, so everything's pretty good. Things are great here. But I want to say Mazen and I went to San Francisco not that long ago to do a training, and there was a bunch of native devs there. And you see a big difference between the Airbnb days where they're just, there's no adoption of React Native. And now you see people from the native side asking deep philosophical and interesting questions on how to go ahead and really integrate React Native as a layer across multiple platforms.
Brandon?
Yeah. Brandon Mathis here, engineering lead at This.Labs. I've been working in React Native since like 2015. I just casually ambled across a coworker's computer one day who was a mobile developer, and I saw a Ruby stack trace and was like, what's going on? And he was really upset and couldn't figure out what was going on. And at the time, I was a big time Ruby developer. So I cracked open Fastlane and started solving problems. And that's what happens when you help somebody out. You can fall backwards into a completely different discipline. So here I am. I've been doing React Native development for a good while now. Recently released an app on the App Store called Skylight Social with a team based out of Seattle that's intended to take over TikTok. So anyone watching, you should go check that out. Skylight Social on the App Store right now. It's live. And I'm excited to share a couple of my hot takes and cold truths about the React Native world.
Why cold truths got bunny ears? They have to be really cold, Brandon.
Yeah.
I want it.
Some of them might not be like super cold. Maybe they're just like the straight up truth. But I've got a few. I've got a few. If you want to dive right into it, I'm definitely down to share because I love talking opinions, and sometimes I like to portray my opinions as facts. So, maybe
there you go.
I'm excited. Yeah, I want to hear some of these.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, before we jump into that, before we
Mhm.
do that, let's kind of give some context to everybody watching. So maybe we have some people in here that are attending today that aren't necessarily React Native
Mm.
developers. Maybe they are, who knows? But like, let's cover our basis first, and let's kind of give the idea of what we're talking about. So we're talking about the State of React Native survey of 2024 that came out. A lot of good, valuable information in this. I loved how detailed they went into the developer backgrounds and what that demographic actually looked like. So a lot of people that comment on it were React developers or backend developers. They started with React Native. Even Android developers commented on this, which I think was really valuable. But the thing that I love is 85% of the people were using React Native professionally. So I think if you're looking at it from an enterprise or organizational level, this is probably going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
And then 10% using it as a hobby, 5% were students. So I feel like this is like a really good idea into what the industry is probably going to be utilizing it for.
Well, what's
so-
funny is that this
Mhm.
this is definitely a change from everything when React Native first started. If you scroll up to that, you
Yeah.
could just pretty much invert those graphs, like, and that's what it looked like in 2017. If you saw people, React Native was just the cool, interesting thing to do, but it was as a way to kind of bring your skills across platforms, not to support like like Fortune 100 apps across multiple platforms. At that time, for a long time, you've watched React Native, strangely enough, move up market despite all the people trying to snipe it and all the competition happen. It's been the first thing. Here's a hot take. It's been the first one to actually deliver on the promise that you're going to take that code and actually get some reapplication along it, and the philosophies that came along with it have been coming along with it. So I've been amazed to see this graph right here, because I remember when it was absolutely the other way. And I'm setting up Brandon to go ahead and bring one of those cold truths, but if you won't bring it, I'll just keep going.
I mean, Grant, I honestly agree with your hot take, man. I mean, React Native has been the only one to deliver. And I'm sure there's Xamarin devs in the chat right now shaking their fist, but
they have a compilation error. They can't shake the fist. They're still trying to figure out.
I mean, I definitely feel like, it could be a bit of a hot take, but maybe for people in the React Native community, they might not realize it. But we've been trying to do this hybrid application development thing for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And I think that React Native, I mean, we're coming into maturity, releasing 1.0 hopefully soon. But
he started right away.
There it is. Time till 1.0. 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
I'm sure there are excellent internal core team reasons for that, but it's definitely been I really think, I mean, React Native, it's like the ecosystem around it, I think, that like really just like is slingshotting it like upwards, is like all of the awesome. It's like once you're in JavaScript, you get all these cool JavaScript modules and stuff, and Expo on top of that. I mean, it's
right. And another piece that comes into that is that, I mean, think about all the mistakes of other platforms. Like, hey, let's throw them into C#. Let's throw them into Dart. Like a lot of the decisions that happen is here. Like, you want to bring people in. You want to give them the familiarity of React, which was dominating the web market, with a cross-platform sort of solution to have shareable code. And I think like once you get there, like you have all of NPM at your back, you have all these other features. It's hard not to stumble into at least some level of success. Now, don't get me wrong, there be dragons inside of React Native, and we help people with that all the time. But it got across the bridge that we've been waiting for, just like you said there. And I think, you know what, we should market some shirts that says like, I was there before React 1.0. Just like we should start selling those. There's a small market of people who can wear that.
It's interesting. I've got so many questions, and it's probably going to be better for a different live stream than this one. I have dabbled in cross-platform solutions like Flutter. I've had spirited debates with Theo on it. We definitely know his takes on it. We've had some fun Twitter spaces on it. Why do you feel like React Native is becoming that go-to item for cross-platform solutions? And I know there's a lot of takes. Like many say, like React Native isn't truly like a write once, run anywhere kind of solution, because some platforms have specific code, and it's going to be inevitable that you have to have something there for that. Do you see it like as a trade-off? Like, how do you see this going on in the future? And like, maybe does it fundamentally undermine like a framework's appeal of being like a fully native solution?
I think you had many questions in there.
Yeah, I have that tendency to do that, unfortunately.
No, you're good. I mean, so like one question like you had in there is why are we seeing it like grow and be so successful? I think it's the companies that are behind it, right? Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, or just naming a few. They're spearheading it and making sure it's moving forward. And the community, there's a lot of community support for it. If you look at every release that comes out, there's upwards of 4,000 or 5,000 commits per version that comes out. And that's not all Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft. It's the community. Community people are coming out there, opening up PRs, putting in commits, putting in time to make sure it's better. Now, keep not wanting to bring it back to the 1.0 discussion, but there's a lot around it, right? There's the whole, there needs to be marketing around it because it's a business decision, right? Companies are like, hey, I'm not going to go with it because it's not 1.0. I think that talk is kind of out the window now because it's proven its point now. From a Meta perspective, they probably want new architecture stability, no old architecture in the code kind of thing, and no more breaking changes. I'm using that lightly, but no breaking changes from an API perspective to then be like, all right, now we can talk about 1.0 getting there. So there's that piece to it. Now, another part of your question on like, why is it here? And, sharing code, React Native, depending on your app, right? You might have an app where you're like, maybe we can reuse 100% of our code. But at that point, I challenge you to be like, should you be at 100% of sharing your code? You should have, I'm trying to say here, the native feel for iOS and for Android, because that's what users expect these days.
Per platform.
You can't have 100%. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, to yes and on that, the concept of hover on, web developers are familiar with it. iOS and Android developers, there's no such thing as hovering over a button. That's an indecisive user. But you have to, when you move this over to things like, an Apple TV device, the only thing you have for selection is like hovering and focus. And so like these platform differences fit on those particular pieces, and there's just no getting away, I think, from the sort of the small differences that happen there. Each platform you add, the lower code reusability goes away. That doesn't mean that we throw the baby out with the bathwater. What we're seeing here is a group effort to minimize the amount of platform instability that happens when your code needs to go out in a business logic to market. I
have neglected to look at the comments, so I apologize, y'all. Good morning, everybody. I see some familiar faces. Good morning. Xamarin is dead. All right. Let's not get he's only been 10 years. All right. I thought Xamarin Forms is no longer supported by Microsoft. They moved to Maui. Yes. What's going on? Hey. All right. Perfect. So let's kind of progress through this survey a little bit further. Yeah. Top React Native app user counts. Only me, as far as the respondents go. Quite a few of the responses, 1 million and more. I think that's like a really good take on the belief within this survey this year. There was one thing that I saw as I was looking through this, and I noted it, and I don't have that note with me at the moment, unfortunately. Where is this? Platforms APIs. The usage of available platforms and APIs and like their takes on this. Are there certain, and I know we have like a wide variety of attendees today from where, Twitter and YouTube, et cetera, but like, are there certain like APIs that are like, these are my go-tos, I'm going to it every single time? Are there certain considerations that you think if somebody's trying to make maybe their first one or the 50th one that they should be reconsidering or considering every single time?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of those. I think you start with Expo, the blessed framework by Meta. You use Expo. Their packages are going to be well maintained, well written. Their API is going to be great. Their docs are great. And then, what's interesting, number one on there is camera. I wouldn't go with like the bare camera one. I would go with Vision Camera from Mark Rusavi, for example. So I think it's more of knowing which ones to go with. Like you can't, there's no other one but gesture handler, React Native gesture handler. You need that React navigation or Expo router, which all, stack on each other in React Native screens. They all use gesture handler. So you need gesture handler within there. I think it goes down to more of what are you doing that's different from like the core of native app? So are you file system, location, appearance, storage? Do you want to, state management? Then that's probably when you start reaching outside of the box and going and doing your research outside of the Expo ecosystem. Well, now Expo has brought in stuff like location and file system. So that's kind of also going out the window too, because Expo is trying to take over, not necessarily take over, but help the community by maintaining and having these Expo branded packages.
Yeah, Expo Code has been a sort of a backbone of React Native development for a long time. Their libraries, their contributions to open source have always been inspiring. For the first 5 years, I just figured Expo was a nonprofit or something. I had no idea how they were working. And it's really nice to see them come into their own, having excellent conferences, releases, products, EAS. It's just been really nice to see Expo flourish with all the hard work that they've been doing for React Native for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Expo, that was kind of like one of my cold truths, y'all. Was with the quotes.
Right.
But it's a cold truth, in my opinion, is Expo is mandatory now. I don't think anyone should be building a React Native application without Expo. And almost in a way, like if you're looking to learn React Native, this might be a hot take, you should go to Expo first. I mean, their guides are so amazing, and have helped so many engineers I know upskill themselves on some of like the biggest humps with mobile native development or just native development in general, which is like setting up your development environment. That in and of itself can be a bit of a bear. It's not just, install Node and start building a website. There's a lot more involved. And I can't imagine building or working on a React Native app like now in 2025 that isn't inside of Expo. I actually just recently had an application come my way where they're on a very old version of React Native. It was like 0.62. And I didn't even bother with an update. I just made a new application in Expo and copied their JavaScript over. And it was so simple. And then from there on out, updates become much, much, much easier. The native module access to them you get. I'm a big fan. And
I mean, the top two trainings out there that I know of, if you want to learn React Native from the beginning, one is by Caddy and the other one is by Beto. And they're both Expo devs at the end of the day. So they are not only giving out good content, good training, but also great software.
We have quite a few questions that come in the chat, so I'm going to try and address a couple of them. And I'll ask this one: is Expo already becoming the standard for React Native, sort of like Next.js or Vite for React?
I want to say yes to that. Yeah, I mean they're carrying a lot of the like native side of things for you and doing all that for you and here's the thing. Expo's developer experience is second to none. If you look at their EAS, so application services, so if you want to get to do builds or push updates to the store and kind of go do over-the-air updates, that developer experience is amazing.
Yeah,
I know there's Code Push, or Microsoft had App Center, which had Code Push in the past. That was very hard and clunky, and it was a steep learning curve. EAS kind of makes it so much easier for you. So yes, it's becoming the standard. And if you're not doing Expo for your React Native app, you're kind of making it harder for yourself.
Yeah. Which, with Brandon, are you doing? You still doing all the Ruby code to release apps, or you switched over to EAS?
No, I use EAS all the time now. I mean, my working directly and bothering directly with Fastlane configuration days are over. And
ditto. Yeah,
it has been. I've been really, really happy with it because it was just this case that any team I was on, I was the only person that could resolve some of these like core issues to ship the app. And now again, you run into a problem. Expo's guides and EAS is amazing. Their community is amazing. They have a Discord server that's incredibly active with people actually openly answering questions. I've posted questions in the Discord and gotten answers and even fixed problems, which is kind of unique for a Discord server, I would say. I'm a member of a few of them, and usually my questions just go off into like the ether and no answer ever comes back. So not so much Fastlane anymore now, man. Not so much. It's still there under the hood, though. I will say, like, it's still there under the hood. EAS is in it, so it's a thing. And,
EAS is a wrapper, right? It's a wrapper around Fastlane, and but what they're doing is they're making the API and the developer experience better than what Fastlane tried to do, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when Maza, when you were saying like Expo, when you were talking about Expo and React Native and their relationship to each other, and one of the commenters compared React and Vite, I was like, with my Ruby hat on, I'm like, Expo is like Rails for React Native. I mean, I come from the Ruby on Rails world. Ruby is the language, Rails is the framework, and Rails has a ton of opinionated configurations in it, and it makes things really easy by standardizing the flow overall across the team. Expo does a lot of that, and that's just why me personally, I'm very drawn to it. And I think other people, if you're not trying Expo out this year because you've had a bad experience in the past and you had to eject and that created a bunch of pain, give it a second thought. Truly, please give it a second thought. Try it this year. It's changed so much. They've come. I haven't
heard the word eject in a while.
I still hear it from time to time from engineers when I tell them, "Oh, I'm using Expo." They're like, "Oh, I don't know. 3 years ago, I made an app in Expo and I had to eject, and it was so painful."
Well, doesn't that really make the point here in React Native's maturity? One of the things that I really think is interesting is for a while we've known about the new architecture. Then it was like, hey, y'all, it's coming. And then this seems to be the year of, okay, well, now we have to go ahead and implement it. We're all sort of getting on this new page. There's a lot more buy-in. There is a lot of solutions where everybody was just afraid, and open source happened in the past. Like, what happens if Apple says you can't do this? Or what happens if Meta, then Facebook, says, oh, we're not going to support React Native anymore? It sort of has hit a new gear here, where I think that's why we saw it go up market, is that it's not the risky thing anymore. There's new risky things out there, and they're doing interesting and cool stuff. And I think that's eating up where people are doing coding on their weekends, if people are still coding on their weekends. but React Native to me has sort of like, nobody's going to get fired for suggesting React Native. It's gotten to that stability.
Yeah.
We have, I'm only bringing this up because today's episode is hot takes and cold truths. This is an interesting one, and I'm curious what the response will be. I don't know if you've seen this comment, but it's from Ken. I don't even bother with upgrades anymore. I just started a new Expo project and copy the JavaScript over. It's the best.
That is a cold truth of how easy Expo makes it for you. Yes, I could get behind that. Now, of course, there might be some breaking changes in the code. Yeah. And I will say, if you don't do it that way, you just run the npx, I forget the command off the top of my head, but Expo has a CLI where it's just, Expo upgrade -- fix, and it does the upgrade for you. And that's it. I mean, you could do it that way also.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a crazy approach. If someone handed me an application that was initialized in Expo back in like 2023, so we're talking like version 40 something or whatever, like maybe, it's like if I'm jumping multiple Expo versions, like it's not the craziest idea. Yeah, I would probably take that approach. I would just initialize a new app and copy the JavaScript bundle right in. I think you would definitely kind of start to maybe run into some pain if there was like any form of custom native module development or really unique plugin configurations. But it kind of depends on the app and the user base and the size. Like Danny, when you pulled that one graph up that showed like all the different, like some 100 users, some 100,000 users, and it was like equal across all of those brackets. I was like, that's a really good sign. So React Native, good for big projects, good for small projects, good for all projects. Like, I mean, there isn't like, we're kind of out of that realm of like, oh, React Native is good if you're just going to make a little to-do app or a note-taking app. But if you're going to make a real app, now it's like, yeah, you can make an app with hundreds of thousands of users, throw it out there, and they should have a pretty good experience.
To be fair, React Native upgrades depend on your version number. There's just always going to be a certain version jump that's been the bane of existence. And if you cross that magic number, and you can think back through history, through certain upgrades, through React Native and certain numbers, it might just be easier to reinitiate a new app rather than drag those across that version. I'm guilty of doing exactly that, where I just like, okay, I'll go do the native stuff again. Just give me an upgrade.
Danny, you're muted. Sorry.
Oh no, this whole time.
Muted in 2025.
Wow.
You think I would have learned by now, y'all?
You're like, why is everybody talking over me?
People just don't understand. I said so many great gems, but it's lost to the ether now.
All the hot
y'all
truths.
missed out. Y'all missed out. I apologize.
There is a comment in the on LinkedIn from Arun. Actually, I want to highlight real quick. It's probably just answering his question at the end of the day. If you're on the new architecture, the React Native debugger is great, and it has a network tab, but it's also still experimental, and also Reactotron, which is Infinite Red's product for helping debug. That's also a great one for debugging. So React Native debugger built by Meta, used by Meta in all their projects, requires you to be on a certain version. I believe that was 77 or 76, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of gives you all those tools right out of the box too.
Arun followed up with, yes, me too, but nothing was heard from the React Native side about network debugging. I'm guessing your comment just solves that comment, right?
It should be. That's what I thought. The React Native debugger has that. It's experimental, so you might have some issues with it, but give Reactotron a try. It does that.
And then we got this comment here going with the hot takes and cold truths. Expo is great until you need custom native modules.
Yeah, I hear this a lot from people. I think Keith's point is echoed frequently across a lot of engineers. I hear this often, and that's changed recently. As a matter of fact, Skylight Social, the application I've been working on, we have custom native modules in it and are using Expo. Expo has a native module API, if you will, that allows you to initialize directories inside of your project with their own iOS and Android directories with custom native code inside of them. I'm not going to make the claim that that API is exceptionally mature. It does what it does very, very effectively, but using it can be sometimes a little awkward. But with like Expo's continuous native generation philosophy, where they say you should be able to delete the iOS directory and reform it back up at a moment's notice, is kind of driving this idea of, let's not open up our iOS directory and start making all these modifications directly inside of them. Let's make our own modules, pack them up in such a way so that they can be included inside of an Expo project and just self-include my module. And for example, with Skylight, the entire camera, the whole entire editor flow, all of that is written in native code, but everything is still in Expo. Expo updates are firing out live code to people, EAS for shipment and stuff like that. All because we use the Expo native module. I guess I should call it an SDK. Maybe I'm calling it an API right now, but please look it up. Please look it up. It's and if you haven't heard of it, that's totally okay. This stuff is new. This stuff is very new.
Perfect. All right. Next part of this survey, state management. And I guess asking the same question we see on the screen, what state management solutions do you use in your React Native apps?
Oh boy.
This is like the question, man.
This has been the question. This has been, I want to say like it was 2018. I did a React State Museum, which was, I grabbed almost 10 or plus libraries. And then I put them out there and in how to manage state in React and React Native. And they had to work on, both. And then I had examples of doing the same exact code over and over and over and over and over again. And the truth is, they all had different benefits and drawbacks. Some of them way more benefits and some of them way more drawbacks that were weirdly opinionated to what the needs were. If like you had to make sure you absolutely could not make a mistake, or you had a flow chart, like X state was amazing. You had all these cool different ways people are doing things. But the truth is, we're still arguing about these today. Like there's one solution that solves them all. And, you know, I'll be honest, at Infinite Red, we do have a solution that we think solves a lot of problems, but it has its own limitations, especially, you know, with fighting into the new architecture. So the truth is, it's so funny. It's easy to get opinionated and separate people here on state management. But this, to me, is just like the spot where we're all still trying to figure out there's all these amazing benefits to doing it functional. There's all these benefits to doing it almost like observable and reactive. But like, one of us is doing like a game app that needs to step through time, and the other one is doing a streaming app that needs to cancel out megabytes of stuff coming down the pipe. You can't say that those solutions will automatically work for each other.
Can I give a hot take?
I want
Please,
it.
man.
Okay. I don't think I've said this on the podcast or anything before.
Uh-oh, here it comes.
Recording.
Please don't use Redux. Please.
I see. Even chat agrees with you. Even chat agrees.
LinkedIn
Look at
user.
'em.
LinkedIn user. Yes. Please. That's my hot take. Don't use Redux. Currently, I'm using Zistand. I like it. It's doing great. I think a lot of times the main question is, if you need state management, are you using it right for your solution? That's the main part. That's it. Use whatever you want. Don't use your Redux. Use whatever you want. But is it being used within your context, right? I helped a friend build an app, and we used React Query exclusively. No state management within the app. And it worked great, performant. It's on the new architecture. He's about to release it to the store. No state management. And React Query just did it all for you.
Yeah, I have an app as well that's, been on the App Store for, several years now. I also have like no state management library inside of it either, but I'm using GraphQL throughout the whole thing and Apollo to interface with that. So like the global store of data pulled from the API is like provided to me via like the GraphQL cache. So like sometimes like when this conversation comes up, I want to be like, my hot take is none of them. But I think, Grant, you brought up a fair point. What if you're making a game that has really complex state? I personally have never sat down and professionally made a game. I've made games for fun, and I have a goal this year to attempt to make a mobile game. I've made plenty of mobile apps, but not a game. So maybe my opinion will change at the end of the year when I attempt this task. But
if you reach for Redux, it'll probably change your opinion.
Yeah, I've been
with
scarred.
the dispatch of truth.
Yes, Maz and I have been scarred.
This is turning into a saga.
Yeah. Man.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I was gonna make
How
a
epic.
terrible joke of, well, we just need Tanner Lindsley, for those that don't know, to come and make a state manager. But you just said you could use React Query or TanStack Query in this. If that's the case, why isn't that the default, and why isn't it not even on this list? Because I would assume it's just such a great tool.
I don't think it's considered a state management tool at the end of the day, right? So the React Query side of it is more for like the fetching and caching side of it, similar to what Brandon mentioned with Apollo and GraphQL. Both of these tools have great caching mechanisms, right? You need to make sure I think if your backend can support GraphQL, use it, right? There's some pain points that I've heard with it, but that's fine. React Query is great whenever you just want to use plain fetch for it. I have heard, though, people use, now it's not meant for it, MMKV, React Native MMKV is like key value store pair with React Query to kind of do a small state management piece, right? Like, let's see, someone gave an experience where they had like an onboarding flow of multiple screens. They pulled in Zistand just to use it for the onboarding where, user clicks through the onboarding side, sends it up to the API, and at no point after that are they using state management because it's not needed. And if it is, it's being handled by the API and the caching layer. So I don't know. I think because it's considered more of like the API tool and a caching tool, similar to to GraphQL and Apollo, right? We might see it somewhere else in the survey. I think it is somewhere else on the survey. So
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing that impressed me about this was from 2022 to 2024, there isn't much movement except when it came to Redux. Of course, there's a very decent sized decline, but Zustand has a pretty impressive adoption rate over the course of those 2 years, which I think is, okay. I think we touched on this earlier, but this is a good question, and definitely I think we'll bring in the hot takes or cold truths. But I mean, you did touch it within like the first couple of minutes of us getting on the slide, but it's like, what is your best argument against native development to use a tool, I guess, like React Native?
Yeah.
Well, you want to go first? I know, Brandon, you've got lots of cold
I mean, my hot take is I don't necessarily disagree with native development, but I think in this era, if someone is releasing a mobile app, they more than likely want to target iOS and Android. And it's that core problem that is where the issue for me with native development arises. I don't want to hate at all on native developers and the added advantages that you get from just building iOS code directly in Swift. I mean, it's definitely has huge advantages, but I would say if you're one person looking to get a mobile application out there, I can't imagine doing it all native and having to do Android and Swift, because usually if I'm building an application for a business, their mandate is that it has to be as available as absolutely possible. And that's what React Native is giving me.
That's a big piece of the mentality. Let's talk about the progression of mobile app development for a second here. It used to be there's an app for that. There's an idea for that. And I used to tell people I write native apps, and our Uber drivers would pull over and be like, I have this idea. I'm going to give you 2% of my $1 billion company. You'll be rich. You just write the whole thing yourself. And that dream, is as dreamy as it was what used to happen. There was just one person that delivered something, and they delivered it to one platform. And so people were reading how to build an iPhone app, books, and then building their dream app, and then hopefully cashing out on it. That world's just gone. It's gone. And we were a native app development company. We used to build. We had people pay us to build an entire iOS app, and then pay us again to build the same thing over an Android again, right? You put that right next to the team support approaching the business logic shared between React as web and React Native on mobile, and this sort of reusability that has to happen for you to even make a wake in the market as it exists today. Then starting off with two hands tied behind your back and your ankles locked together is not how you want to go ahead and do it. If you are ready to go ahead and read all those books and build all the apps in native, and you want to come across all those platforms, and then have a business idea on version 1.1 and go back and redo all the same functionality and time the release of those so that everybody gets the feature at the same time, then you are at a disadvantage. And that's why you can't do it.
It's a disadvantage too, because the tooling that Xcode and Android Studio give you are great, right? They're built for each of their platforms, and you should leverage their tooling.
Yes.
So the performance monitor on Xcode is great for CPU and all that type of stuff. I know they have accessibility side. You also get to see the stack as you're adding screens. You can kind of see how it progressively grows within it. So those are all features that you should be using while you're developing. And we're developing cross-platform apps, so it only comes with a territory that you have to have Xcode, Android Studio, VS Code or Cursor, and those keep adding on, right? Native devs might be like, well, I only need Xcode. Sure, but are you building Android apps? You're not. So it comes with the territory.
Yeah, Mazen, that was one of the cold truths I had, which it took me longer to learn this than I realized. And I struggled for many years as a React Native developer because I just avoided Xcode and Android Studio like the plague. Because everyone had always been like, Xcode. Everyone speaks negatively about it, because I think as engineers, we always kind of like to speak a little negatively about our tools. It lets us blow off steam. But Oh man, my skill set leveled up immensely when I did start to dedicate time towards understanding Xcode and understanding Android Studio, and it started to get me to think like, like I agree with all the points brought up about like you're slightly at a disadvantage if you're not releasing to both stores and things like that. But part of me gets like a little concerned that if I socialize these opinions too much, I'm going to have fewer native developers out there. And then who's going to build React Native for me? Because you need to I need those native developers out there helping to adopt the SDK to React Native. So there's I don't know, a question swirls in my mind of, what's the value of diving in deep and really, really, really understanding Swift if your career goal is to build mobile applications? You should be maybe diving into any hybrid application development platform. I would naturally advocate for React Native, but okay, so that skill set never gets learned. So where are the skills going of people who are helping us, as Apple comes out and Android comes out with new SDKs, rolling those into, usable things in React Native world? It's, I don't know. It's a struggle, but.
All right, let's go back to this now. All right. So we have some more comments about state management. I feel like we've covered the gamut of it, so maybe some of these are older comments. Other solution, to answer that query, 41%. Haha, Moz. Anyway, no. State management pain points, synchronization issues, excessive re-renders. Y'all got any takes on this? Any advice even as well?
I think it goes back to using the state management tool right for your solution. That's my advice for it. It's more of, if you are running into synchronization issues, excessive re-renders, excessive complexity, that one you're probably using Redux. Excessive boilerplate, my point stands. I think we need to, so jokes aside on that, but that's usually when I hear excessive boilerplate and complexity, that's where my mind goes. I think you need to reassess, are you using stage management for the right tool? And are you, do you have it set up right, essentially? And I'm not saying you didn't follow the docs right. It's just sometimes state management, you might miss one little point and it's a complete trickle effect, and it just adds on as you add data to your state management. And going back to Zustand and why I like reaching for Zustand these days is it has great versioning. So if you mess something up in production, you can just increment your version of your state management. And when your user moves up to the new version, they get the new state structure, data structure, and then all of a sudden, you could have resolved all the issues. With Redux, for example, I know you have to go through a whole migration pipeline on when as your app is opening up for the first time after upgrade, which might cause a long boot time, TTI, and then you have users closing the app mid migration, and you might have some issues within that. So that's my take on that. It's are you using the right tool for the solution that you need it for?
I like it. All right, and I think from here, this on-device storage. I'm very curious on takes on this, and I'm also curious if anyone has even experimented with something like Terso and what thoughts are around that. SQLite, but okay.
No, yeah, I do feel like MMKV should be higher than async storage. I've just seen a lot better performance from MMKV than async storage. That's my take on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think async storage is popular because it's there for free. I personally, I'll have to be, full transparency. I've never used anything but async storage. But looking at that graph, I think I should definitely try some other options because async storage comes with some challenges. I'll say.
And it's async while MMKV is synchronous, and you get that quicker feedback. And
yes,
well, to each their own. At some point, does your app actually need querying? Does it need background, rehydration? Does it need to share information with even other apps? As soon as your need grows, then you quickly need to find the library that fits that. The trick to most of that is just knowing ahead of time which ones, what kind of features you're going to need, and then choosing the right one. Choosing as you go is expensive.
On data fetching, I see TanStack climbing up there, 59%. But for the vast majority, it seems like it's been pretty stale or stagnant, which makes me then wonder, where is that increase coming from? Is it an increase in developers' utilization? Because there isn't like a big decline in other areas. I guess Apollo Client is one of them. So maybe that's where some of that migration is happening.
I think that's, this is an interesting graph to look at, because the top two, Axios and Fetch API, you have to use, you'd use one of them while using TanStack query. So it's kind of a little bit, I wouldn't say misleading necessarily, but they both kind of need to go, one of them needs to go hand in hand with TanStack query to make it work, right? So almost double dipping within here. The rest, I haven't used Relay, Apollo Client, Brandon, you might be able to speak better on that one.
Yeah, I mean, Relay, I mean, like, it links in my mind as like, I mean, that was like a byproduct of the GraphQL days, and it did a lot of stuff that I think maybe people just didn't need or never like reached a level of maturity. I think it's interesting to see the TanStack query line going up and the Apollo line going down. Maybe that's just because, in 2022, I don't know what the state of TanStack query was, but I know if I had a GraphQL API I was interfacing with, I would only consider Apollo. I think there's just a lot new functionality, and some people are trying some new tools. This is curious. I don't know. Today I learned, like, looking at this, seeing like, I would not expect to see Apollo trending in a downwards direction. But maybe there's something there. I'm going to have to dig a little bit more into this.
I think it's more about backend supporting GraphQL.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're starting to see less of that. I think there was like everyone kind of rode on that. Hey, GraphQL, this is the latest and greatest shiny thing. And then it's dipping off maybe. Just a thought.
All right, let's move and progress this a little bit further.
All right, give me something. We need some more cold truths. So give us a good one.
Where should I go to get the spicy clips and takes?
That's a good question.
Well, navigation ratios over time.
I mean, look at that blue Expo router.
Wow.
Like,
that's huge.
Yes.
Yeah. And here's an interesting one to this. If you're using Expo router, you want to follow file-based routing, kind of like where you're used to on the web. That's perfectly fine. And especially if you want to share with the web, I totally get it. React Navigation has that little dip. It's the first one on top. Expo router uses React Navigation. So if you want to switch from router to navigation, it's not necessarily a big jump or ask. You might have a huge diff because you're changing your file structure. And that's pretty much it at the end of the day. So this, I think, is a cold truth that Expo is continuing to take over.
Yeah. I think they should send us all swag for talking so good about it.
Honestly, though,
yeah,
I can always use.
I have an Expo hat somewhere here.
Yeah.
All right, pain points. Expo router.
Where's developers on this graph?
Yeah, Expo router, man. What an interesting one to call out as a pain point. The pain point I experienced the most with Expo router is their documentation is like spread across React router and Expo router. It's like Expo router wraps React router, and React router is moving on to 7.0, but like Expo router is more like 6.0. You got to be kind of like a you need to be like already, like, you got to have some knowledge already about routing to get into it. So I would say, like, yes, one of the pain points, I very much agree with the fact that Expo router's at the top there. It like gives me a lot. But when I run into an issue, it is very difficult for me to navigate the documentation and understand and make sure that I'm looking at exactly the right thing. And, I have years and years of experience under my belt, so I can only imagine what it's like for someone who's completely new.
It kind of goes to number 7 there, yeah.
Lack of documentation. They just go down there.
Yeah.
I mean, the React Native community's done so much with documentation, though. But
yeah, I
guess we got to do more.
It's such a difficult. It's a live document. So it's a bare. You need you need people who are librarians to take care of it continuously.
I
And
mean,
it's
how
a
many
great place for open
versions?
source.
How many versions of React Native come out a year? And we're expecting the meta team to change their documentation literally with every. It's tough. You need a full team dedicated to it to maintain it. I know Meta has. Like this week is actually one of them where they work on something that is not their core work. So if you're a React Native engineer working in like iOS, you're not doing the iOS work this week. You're working on what they call something sustainability within there. But I know, for example, Ricardo Cipoleski, who's on the Meta team this week, is dedicated to fixing up the docs and working on adding docs. So they are dedicating time to it within it. But I do agree, it needs more time in general.
And we like to pretend that all of us have excellent communication skills. The truth is, understanding a problem and being able to explain the problem to other people is two different skill sets. And documenting these things. I mean, take a look at like type problems or number 6. Like, I'm not even sure where that should be on there. I guess I see how, but to a certain degree, it's just lining up the numbers is difficult, and it takes a special hand to kind of do that. And the person who has the answers doesn't always have the time to go ahead and share that solution. And we see that when something's moving fast, but it also creates a lot of opportunity as well, which you see Expo has been continuing to fill with, when they see that kind of opportunity, and also consulting companies like ours. We continue to come in, bring that information in. I think it helps raise all ships and make the problems more surmountable. So it's good to see that there's not like one huge glaring, absolutely ridiculous item on here. I'd say that this is probably what I would consider, if you had to get people's problems, a healthy graph and somewhat even distribution.
I would maybe say move animations up a little bit, but
depends on your
not all of
libraries,
us suffer like I suffer.
Mazen's an animation expert, by the way. Just he did a workshop. It was absolutely beautiful. We'll have to send you the link.
I was gonna ask in the data fetching one, but I don't want to seem like I didn't know what I was talking about. So I actually did some research to see if I knew what I was talking about. And so I just found out that React Native got something that I'm a big fan of on the React side of things, from web development side. Y'all got suspense, and you got like concurrent features. Like, is this something now that you're rethinking how your data fetching is going, and maybe like UI loading strategies? Is this like, has this even entered your radar of something that you should even be thinking about?
This is cutting edge. Okay. To be able to use it, you kind of need to be on new architecture, like latest and greatest, and probably like nightly-ish of React Native. Like I think next version of React Native that just came out actually, 79, which has React 19. I think at this point, if you're leveraging new architecture, you can start using that, what you just mentioned, to its fullest extent. So to get the suspense and all that from it. But yes, the one thing about data fetching, we always talk about it internally. It's like, sometimes it's best to fetch when you click the button to take you to the screen, and not wait to get to the screen to then do the fetching and show you the loading screen, right?
Yeah,
and with all these tools that have come out that are now being leveraged, it makes it 10 times easier to do that, right? So I think that's definitely something that will be thought about extra or differently in the years to come.
So if there's more people like Ken who just delete the project and start a new one in Expo and copy over the JavaScript, they probably are the ones that can leverage this a little bit easier than others.
Well, he needs to wait a little bit more. Expo 53 is coming out either later this week or next week. So at that
he's ready.
Yes,
he's ready.
Yeah, he's ready. Yeah, he's copied over the JavaScript in his clipboard. It's waiting.
Yes. Just make it a GitHub action,
Yeah, he's ready. Awesome. We got a comment from Rob. This is probably earlier, probably because it's so big it just came through. Xstate is chronically underutilized for managing state insofar as controlling the various discrete states and our applications and how we navigate between them. But I don't always think of using it as a data store like some of these other tools.
Yeah. Xstate is such a weirdly it's almost like looking through the problem through a completely different lens, which I think is like beautiful and amazing. It stops you from getting into those weird those issues where you have your stores in some kind of broken set where you almost have to like close the app and reopen it. You're not going to see stuff like that with XState. You're going to be managing the progression through previously foreseen workflows. And if you've ever watched the talk, which David, he outlines it with some beautiful examples. It is a different way of thinking, and larger apps, you will see a much more complicated process to manage your XState. So, again, we go back to the conversation there, like to each their own. Some apps have to be mission critical, and XState is perfect. And some of them just have so many different parameters and difficulties. XState would be almost unreadable as a graph. But I still love it.
Ken came in here with the laughing emoji. So we're good there. All right. Styling ratios over time. I know we're getting close to time, so we're probably going to start wrapping this up real soon. So styling ratios, any comments or thoughts around this? I see there's a decline with style components, which kind of makes sense, but still.
Is that native one at the bottom that's getting the uptick?
Dripsy. Oh,
that red line there.
React Native Unistyles. Yeah, it's definitely
the one trending up above all of those, the Unistyles.
Interesting.
Native one.
Yeah.
Native one. Yeah. My take on styling is don't do inline styling. The style sheet API, don't do that either. I think there's still I think they got rid of it recently, but there was a to-do that said, to-do, make this performant.
Yes.
It doesn't do anything. It just returns the object for you back without typing. So don't do that. If you're going to do any type of styling, we do it in Ignite. Take your styles outside of your component, type them so that you have type safety on them. Use them that way. Or if you want to use a package of any sort, I'm a huge fan of React Native Unistyles these days. It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, Ignite is such a good library for looking at what best practices that we've sort of implemented over the years are. As a matter of fact, when we talked about delete, back in you had to sort of eject from Expo days. I famously just went ahead and reignited a brand new app and then brought the code over to a new Ignite app because we had our best practices inside that it like moved on. It was the fastest upgrade that I'd ever done. So if you take a look, and Ignite and Expo are not mutually exclusive. They work extremely well together, and as a good sort of like what to do on top of that. If you want some hot takes, look at our code base in there.
All right. And I guess, what thoughts around testing, monitoring, any information or tips that you would share on this one based on what we're seeing?
Just ship it. Like the users will let you know if anything's wrong.
We still write tests.
Yeah. Here, I'm Mazen, man. I mean, I was gonna keep my mouth shut, but here's my hot take. Don't spend so much time writing tests.
Wow. Yeah.
That's my hot take. And this is a Ruby developer saying that stuff. So I mean, they're ex-Ruby developer, I guess now.
Oh, wow.
But,
yeah, you were doing test-driven development.
I reach for Jest and Maestro for my tests. I do write tests.
Yes.
Well, let me ask Gant and Mazen, I have a take that's very opposite of Brendan then. Obviously, it's more on the web dev side than React Native, so maybe there's some difference there. But what is your stance on testing strategies?
Well, I'll say real quick and then let Mazen kind of come in here. There's the testing pyramid. There's the amount of like how much tests, how easy they are to write versus like how specific they are versus all the way up to some, like for instance, Appium down there is going to be black box testing independent of any kind of native framework there. So it doesn't care that it's React Native or not. So you're watching here in the grouping of the tests. The easiest ones to write actually proceed to have some benefit. Now we have clients from all different levels that need certain amounts of like there's a difference between an MVP and an app that has 2 million active users on it. Well, I really do enjoy things like Maestro and sort of getting this gray box testing area, fill in the gaps with Jest, and you have an excellent test coverage. Some clients will request plenty more tests than that. And some of them ask, the question like, oh, why are we still writing tests?
Yeah. I think for me personally, given my role in being a consultant, recently it's been, hey client, like how many tests do you want us to write?
Yeah.
And that's what we write. I think Jest and Maestro are the ones we always reach out for. I think sometimes a bug will come in and I'll be like, this will save me time down the road. Let me just write a Maestro test for it and save me 30 minutes of debugging later in the future,
Mhm.
sort of thing. So yeah, Maestro is great with it. I think all that they do is great, and it's a great end-to-end testing, and you put it into your pipeline, GitHub through GitHub Actions or whatever, and it'll save you some time down the line.
Well, and one other piece here, I want to make sure people who come from the website realize this as well. The feedback cycle, as well as the test fix cycle, is longer for app development. And this means that you can't just be like, oh my goodness, we messed that up. Just going to go ahead and change that P to a Q and we're good. What happens is that if you catch a test on your local machine, like if you're catching it in CI or you catch it there, you're actually saving quite a lot of developer time, because the report cycle of active users, you have to have more people have crash, you have to more people have problems for them to report that back. And if they come back through 4-star, 3-star, 2-star reviews, then you're damaging the product. It's more important for mobile app development to catch that as soon as possible, because the actual feedback cycle is insanely long and kind of expensive to the client. So we'd like to push for as many tests as possible, but people got to ship, and you got to know when to cut it. So a good amount of testing with Maestro and Jest is good.
Dang it, Gant, you took my thunder, man. That was gonna be my answer. That was
good
literally
answer.
gonna be.
You're sharing your screen. I'm actually just reading your personal notes.
My goodness.
We'll pretend you were muted and you said it.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. He just heard, dang it. Yeah, that's exactly what my take is. I'm very, very pro testing. I've had like long debates with Theo and others on this one. I'm very, very pro testing. I think, again, my background has always been enterprise, though. So that could be a factor as well. Because I know, for example, my brother Leon Noel, he is not a fan of testing either. He says, I'd rather test and prod and do it in real time. And I'm like, that's just...
YOLO.
I mean, that's a business strategy, right? Like, what if they have a large QA team sort of thing where they're, the whole idea is you build quick, fast, give it to the QA team, they find the bugs, and then you just kind of keep going within that cycle. It's almost like a chaotic cycle to me personally, but I feel like for some businesses, that's the strategy that's employed, and that works for some people.
Yeah. For me, it's like, how efficient is my QA team even going to be if there are bugs that we're pushing through that they got to catch, and now it's taking away their resource to find bigger underlying things. And because they're QA, they might not necessarily understand the lower levels of functionality that we know to expect, but because of this bug, they can't even proceed where they're going through. So for me, like, a good automated test or unit test that catches these things prevents all that. But the other thing too is it gives me what I like to call investment protection, meaning I've invested time and resources into building a component, right? If someone else touches this component or touches something not even inside of that component, but it's relating to it in one way, shape, or form, I want that investment protection, meaning my component is protected. We now have proof that says, hey, what you committed here, what you built and what you developed is the problem set. You need to go debug this instead of taking away development time from me or going into my component and trying to change something because it's operating the way it's supposed to be operating.
Yeah, you see this problem wearing a different hat in the newest, like, sort of, I'll just kind of bring out AI. You have people playing it fast and loose. They're doing all kinds of different stuff, and some of them are becoming millionaires, and some of them are, getting in serious trouble. And then laws are getting passed to sort of fill the gaps behind it. And the truth is, like, you could play fast and loose with mobile app development still, or you could not, but if you're working with enterprise or you're working with, people who will lose money and cause a class action or do anything like that, tests are essential.
Here's a small hot take.
A warm take.
It's a warm take, but I believe it a lot.
Spicy.
Yeah. Strict TypeScript is unit test.
I agree to a certain degree.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. We are way over time.
Oh yeah, and I guess also like integration tests in their natural environment don't make as much sense inside of React because the
I agree with
as
that.
long as you don't break across the functional encapsulation barriers, the integrations are kind of limited as well.
Yeah.
So we've redefined what integration tests are inside of React and React Native versus what the rest of the JavaScript world thinks of them.
Y'all, thank you so much, Mazen, Gant, Brendan. If you have any React Native goals, dreams, or needs, these are the folks that you could reach out to. If you want to geek out about anything web development related or Java related, I'm definitely in that camp where we can have that conversation. But outside of that, y'all, as you always do, let me know in the comments, retweet it, reshare it, repost it, whatever platform you're watching this on. Let me know what live streams you want next. I know we have a couple already kind of scheduled, but let me know about the next ones. I think we'll probably do another React Native one, maybe outside of the survey, talking about some other things. I feel like we could probably talk way too long. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. But regardless, it is a thing. And so, y'all, it's been real. It's been fun. And we will see you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Cheers, y'all. Bye.